Good morning. I miss Carla. Oh, I forgot to turn my phone volume down. I'm not a super popular person, but I don't want any notifications while I'm reading, so let me just do that. Okay, so we're going to continue reading Ghost Squad by Claribel A. Ortega. Before I start, I want to let you know that I am hoping to do a Christmas read-aloud starting Sunday evening of A Christmas Carol. I'm going to read for 4 days. I'm splitting it up into 4 sections. And it's a great story. So I hope you are interested in logging on to watch that too. It's also going to be a live stream like this. And I'll put more information on our Facebook page. And I will put it on the PCL, provcomlib.org events calendar. And I will schedule it on here, so you should get the notification if you're signed up. Okay? Okay. Ghost Squad. We are on chapter 10, page 95. I have an idea, Sid said, digging her toes into the cool grass beneath the willow tree in Lucille's backyard, the fireflies flickering overhead. You said that the fireflies could sense something was off, right? And they're supposed to protect you. Lucille nodded, her eyes narrowing. She didn't like the look on Sid's face. What if we took a few of them with us, ones that haven't been affected by the storm, and used their spirit energy to try and help us take down some of the ghosts all over town? Lucille shook her head. No way. I won't put them in any more danger. Sid sighed. Well, we have to do something about the poltergeist problem. You've heard the reports of hauntings all over town. It's only going to get worse. Do you think it has something to do with the full moon being on Halloween this year? Lucille wondered. Also, how do you propose we even go about catching ghosts in the first place? You're not about to whip out a working model proton pack, are you? I'm glad you asked. Sid got up and ran into the house. A few moments later, she returned with her backpack. I made these last night with instructions from the Phantom Hunters, Amateur Ghost Hunters Manual. Sid pulled out a mason jar, much like the ones in Lucille's willow tree, except this one was tinted a bright green. The lid was painted black and had a few words written on top in white ink. A string connected the latch to the enclosure so that you could close the jar by pulling the latch. The inside of the jar was lined with holographic paper, and a small pouch filled with what looked like oregano hung from a string glued to the inside of the lid. It looked like an art project gone wrong, and it smelled horrible. You can't be for real, Lucille said. You think we're going to legitimately catch ghosts using glass jars filled with some aluminum foil and Italian herbs? Are you sure you weren't accidentally looking at some weird recipe instead? Phantom Hunters swears by them. I might have been a little hasty in the execution, but it's the thought that counts. Lucille raised an eyebrow. I'm pretty sure that's for gift giving, not ghost catching. Hey, who's the expert here? Lucille raised her hands in mock surrender. So, how do my fireflies fit into all this? They can be like our signal or whatever. If they start feeling wonky, then we'll know to be on the lookout for nearby ghosts. That's actually pretty brilliant, Lucille said. I'll have to ask them, though. I won't take them against their will. Can't argue with that. And since your dad is out doing boring dad stuff right now, Sid smiled. Okay, I'll talk to them right now. Lucille sighed. Lucille made a waving gesture at Sid so that she would give her some privacy. She felt weird talking to them around anyone but her dad. Lucille took a deep breath and looked at her firefly family. Her lips curled into a smile as she thought of Tia Milagros with her chancla in hand, Macarena with her hands on her hips, Mamma with her wrinkled hand on Lucilie's shoulder, telling her she could do anything. She knew they would tell her to fight. Macarena appeared on a low bough of the willow, swinging her legs. Can we bring Frankie? She hasn't stopped talking about the storm or Mama in weeks, and I think she wants to help. Before Lucilie could even say hello, Frankie flew out and shifted from firefly to person in a flurry of light and static. Frankie was a boxer before she passed, and she was really good, undefeated, in fact, which was something she loved to remind everyone of at every family gathering. I've been waiting for you, Prima. Let's go. Frankie bounced from one foot to the other, ready for a match. I'm coming too. Tia Milagros appeared, arms crossed and a scowl on her face. Before Lucilie could protest, she held on to Macarena's arm with a death grip. Her cousin cringed, and Lucilie knew it was no use arguing. I know the perfect place to start. Soon after, they had reached their destination, El Castillo de San Marcos. Lucilie waved her hand with a flourish at the stone fortress as if to announce their arrival. How are we going to get in? Sid asked. They won't let us through without an adult. When has that ever stopped us before? Lucilie smirked. Follow me. They rode around the perimeter until they found an unattended gate. Beyond it lay the fortress grounds. Lucilie and Sid chained their bikes to the fence before setting off toward the fortress. If anyone asks, pretend we got separated from our parents, Sid winked. The cool breeze that greeted them as they entered one of the long, narrow passageways inside the fort was a welcome relief from the heat of the day. Lucilie was so distracted by the flurry of tourists skittering about, some even whispering excitedly about hoping to see a real live ghost, that she'd accidentally tuned out Sid entirely. Hello, Earth to Lucilie. Sid waved her hands in the air to grab Lucilie's attention. Did you hear anything I just said? Sorry, Lucilie looked apologetic before offering a smile. As I was saying, Sid continued, the Phantom Hunter's Handbook lists the Castillo de San Marcos in its top 10 most haunted forts in the southeastern United States. So what you're saying, Lucilie cut in, is aside from that oddly specific category choice, this place is totally swarming with ghosts. It has to be. This place looks older than Babette. Sid let out a laugh that echoed faintly around them. If she heard you say that, you'd be a toad already. As they made their way deeper into the belly of the fortress, the temperature continued to drop, and they suddenly found themselves all alone with nothing but the dark, stone tunnel ahead of them and the light of the fireflies at their sides. It's freezing down here. Lucilie rubbed her arms. How much farther? No sooner had the words left her lips than the tunnel ahead of them came to an abrupt halt. Great, Lucilie said. You'd think there would at least be some spirits hanging out at a dead end. Still needs some work, but better, Sid said. Something does feel a bit off down here, though. Ooh, are your witchy senses tingling? Lucilie asked, but she felt it too. I'll check with Macarena to see if she can sense anything. The moment Lucilie removed the lid of the jar, Macarena burst out with a force that knocked Lucilie onto her backside. Lucilie, it's not safe here. You have to go. Macarena looked terrified. But before Lucilie could respond, Sid shouted, I found something. Come look. As Lucilie approached Sid, Macarena flew back into the jar, cowering. See this stone here and that one there? Sid pointed to one on either wall directly across from each other. They're not as grimy as the rest. And look, she pushed on the one closest to her, and it sank about an inch into the wall. Lucilie gasped. Do you think it's some sort of Indiana Jones-like mechanism or something? Let's hope it's not a real booby trap. I wouldn't stand a chance running away from a 3-ton boulder. Sid, if there really is something here, don't you think it's a bit too easy? Lucilie asked. Shh! When the universe gives you a gift, you take it and run. Besides, you're not giving me enough credit. Maybe I'm just a genius. Now, help me with this. Lucily positioned herself across from Sid before placing her left hand on the frigid stone. She stretched out her right arm and took Sid's hand in hers. On the count of 3, 1, 2. They both took a deep breath, hoping it wasn't their last, before pressing their full weight against the stones. Once the dust had cleared, Lucily and Sid could see that a narrow doorway now stood in front of them, where before there had only been a solid wall. The room just ahead opened into what looked like an abandoned military barrack. There were clothes and other personal items strewn about, but otherwise, it looked almost as if it were untouched since forever ago. Sid cleared her throat. What did I say? I'm a genius. Lucily rolled her eyes and sighed, her breath coming out in a puff of white. Looks like somebody spoke too soon. Don't say I didn't warn you, Macarena said pointedly. We stick together. Lucily held her catcher out and signaled for Sid to do the same before taking a few tentative steps into the room. There's no telling what kind of ghosts could be hiding down here. Well, 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 the shadows seemed to say in a voice like the barrage of cannon fire from all sides. What are you two pretty little finches like yourselves doing so far from your nest? Out from the darkness stepped a surly man clothed in a centuries-old Spanish militia uniform. His sinister smile betrayed any good intentions, as did the sliver of something white held at his side. With little light to offer any further details, he could almost pass as being alive. That is, if it weren't for the evidence of a bayonet wound blooming across his chest. Oh, sorry, sir. Sid's voice shook. Didn't mean to bother you. Lucily was quick to continue. We seem to have gotten lost trying to find our parents. We'll just be going back this way now, if you don't mind, Sid chimed in. The soldier advanced a single pace, keeping his back to the shadows. What was that I heard you birdies chirping on about ghosts? Lucily turned around, and he was much closer to them but still casually cleaning out his fingernails. She shifted on her feet, hands sweating, the mason jar vibrating at her waist. Just that everyone says that this place is supposed to be super haunted, but I think it's all just a hoax to get tourists to pay for admission. Haven't seen a single ghost yet. Oh, I wouldn't say that. The man was suddenly in front of them, readying to attack, a sharpened human bone in his hand. Hey, ghosties, why don't we show them just how much of a hoax we really are? His mouth peeled back into a wicked smile. Up close, Lucily could smell the death and decay radiating off him. The girls screamed and tried to get away, but another spirit soldier now stood blocking their path, and the only way out, as more backup arrived. The ghosts were descending from all angles now, and Lucily and Sid's hope of escaping dimmed. Lucily fought against the powerful force of the spirits holding her down, reaching for the clasp of the mason jar at her waist. Inside, Frankie charged at the glass, trying to break free to protect Lucily and Sid, but it only shuddered about as if it were sitting on top of a washing machine. Then the latch flew open, and Frankie shot out of the jar, dealing a powerful blow to the nearest soldier and knocking him back into the confused swarm of ghosts, who released their grip on Lucily and Sid. Lucily jumped to her feet and pointed her catcher at the grotesque-looking spirit that had rounded on them. He laughed in her face and slapped the jar out of Lucily's hands like it was nothing. She watched it crash to the floor of the room and shatter into hundreds of pieces. Run! Frankie shouted in their direction. We'll cover you. Lucily hadn't noticed Macarena's sudden reappearance in all the commotion. She stood back to back with Frankie, fists raised, looking fiercer than Lucily had ever seen her. With a crack of her neck, Macarena shifted into a glittering form of her human self. Light seemed to be emanating from every pore of her skin. She looked beautiful. For a moment, Lucily was transfixed, and so, it appeared, were the spirit soldiers. Lucily, leave it to us. Macarena met Lucily's eyes, her lips unmoving. Once you're through the door, prop it open and wait for my signal to close it. Hypnotized by her light, the soldiers seemed to forget about the girls and began to form a circle around Macarena and Frankie. Lucily and Sid slipped out of the room and into the passageway just beyond the door to wait for the signal. They watched through a crack in the door, and Lucily's stomach twisted with worry. Together, Macarena and Frankie's light grew more and more brilliant. A moment later, the barrack exploded with a blinding light, evaporating every spirit in the room. When the door sealed itself back into place, Lucily and Sid sank to the floor, out of breath. I really hope that was the signal. Sid leaned back against the wall. They went full-on supernova in there. Lucily shifted towards Sid's voice, arms outstretched. But we still lost. The ghost catchers didn't work. We're no closer to figuring out the spell, and it took all of Macarena and Frankie's spirit energy just to save our pathetic butts. Lucily fought back tears as she reached for the jar, still attached to her belt. Inside, the light of her fireflies blinked out. Chapter 11. It was obvious from their first disastrous attempt at ghost hunting that afternoon that they needed something with a much bigger punch to get rid of the evil spirits. Their homemade ghost catchers were not going to cut it. They needed magic. The smooth sound of a saxophone filled the air in the Farrer's house. A particularly loud note startled Sid, and she scowled. She got up and threw her bedroom door open dramatically. Dad, we're trying to study in here. Her dad played a low, remorseful note by way of an apology, and Sid shook her head as she sat back down on her furry throw rug. Lucily was sprawled out on Sid's bedroom floor playing with Sid's dog, Francisco. As they took turns reading from the giant book Babette had given them, searching for anything even remotely helpful. While the book was filled with fascinating details about witches throughout history, they couldn't find any information about the spell they'd read or any clues as to who E.B. was. There was nothing about hauntings and what to do about evil spirits, nor about where they might find the rest of the missing pages from the spell book. Where's the search and find function for physical books when you need it? Lucily yawned and rolled over onto her back. Francisco copied her. Sid flipped back to the section they'd been reading in the library and read aloud from where they'd left off. The Purple Coven was well known and respected in St. Augustine and surrounding townships, working as the village healers and doctors. However, as the hysteria of the witch trials overtook Salem, residents of St. Augustine began to look upon the coven with suspicion and fear. Proctor Braggs and his wife accused one of the young witches, Pilar, of hexing their eldest son, Michael, who had asked for her hand in marriage. The Braggs family brought Pilar to public trial, and despite vehement protests from the betrothed, she was drowned in the San Sebastian River the very same day. Poor Pilar. Lucily plopped sideways onto a giant pillow. There's a footnote here about the Book of Magic that I didn't notice the other day, Sid said. Passed from one coven member to another, El Libro de Lobos was a written record of all the spells and knowledge Las Brujas Moradas possessed. Legend has it that after the events of Pilar's death, the coven set about creating an evil curse that would resurrect an army of the dead and open a gateway to the underworld. Sid stopped abruptly, eyes opened wide. Lucily sat up with a start and looked at Sid. Do you think the spell we used was actually a curse? This curse? I don't know, Sid said. It's possible. Lucily fell back against the mountain of pillows on Sid's floor. How could the coven be so reckless? What if the curse had fallen into the wrong hands? It already did, Lucy. Ours, Sid said. There's more here, though. The only way to stop the curse is with the counterspell from El Libro de Lobos. Lucily sat up at this. So it's not completely hopeless? I mean, technically, sure, but we just have to find a super secret coven, super secret lair, and then hope that the rest of the pages will be there, including the one with the counterspell we need. It's impossible. Sid sounded defeated. Well, it's better than not having a solution at all, Lucily said. So what's the plan, Sherlock? Sid scratched the back of Francisco's ear, and he kicked wildly in the air. We searched the rest of the cemeteries in town. At least now we know that the counterspell must be on one of the pages that were torn out of the book, and if we can't find them, then we go to Babette. Sid bit her lip. She's gonna kill me. Granny goes postal. I can read the headlines now. Babette might just be our only hope. Sid groaned. Can we at least do one last mission on our own before we sentence ourselves? I want to cherish my final moments of life. God, you are so dramatic. Lucily shook her head. How are you going to sneak out again with your dad watching your every move? He's been pulling extra shifts for the ghost tour on weekends to try and to bring in some extra money. It's always busiest leading up to Halloween. Should be easy if we go Friday night, Lucily said, with more confidence than she felt. Guilt tugged at her chest, but she quickly brushed it aside. She had to do this, or things would only get much worse. My parents are going away this weekend for a jazz concert, so I'll be staying with Babette. You should ask your dad if you can sleep over. That way, once she's asleep, we can just sneak out together. But if we get caught, I'm telling them you forced me against my will. Traitor! It's every girl for herself in the ghost apocalypse. Sorry, not sorry. Sid, if you squeal on me. Lucily lunged forward and started tickling Sid. Francisco barked and rolled onto his back, wanting Lucily to give him belly rubs too. Stop! I can't! Lucy! Sid's face was red and tears streamed down her cheeks. A knock on the door interrupted what had developed into a fit of shrieking and barking. Sid's dad popped his head in, the saxophone still hanging around his neck. Having fun, you two? The girls looked at each other before breaking out into another fit of giggles. It's almost time for dinner, Sid. We're having your favorite, fried plantains and steak. Sid's dad made some of the best fried plantains Lucily had ever tasted, but she would never let Simon know that. You're welcome to stay and eat too if you'd like, Lucily. Oh gosh, that sounds so amazing. Lucily's mouth watered. But I promised my dad I'd be home for dinner tonight. No problem. Next time. Be down in 5, Sid, okay? Before closing the door, he shot Lucily and Sid the finger gun move, sound effects and all. Lucily loved how weird and funny Sid's dad was. With everything going on at home lately, she missed just talking to her dad and joking around with him, even if it was super cringeworthy. Tomorrow night, then? Sid raised an eyebrow. Lucily smiled. Tomorrow night. That's the end of chapter 11, so we better stop there. So next Monday, we'll start chapter 12, which is page 113. Hi. Thanks for listening. I hope you liked it, and enjoy the rest of your week, and I'll see you on Monday. Oh, but if don't forget about my reading I'm going to start on Sunday, which is a different book. It's A Christmas Carol, and that's going to be Sunday evenings, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. But I'll post the time and everything as soon as I have it all figured out. Bye-bye.